Jordan Moore, Shaun Cody, Cody Kessler, and Keely Eure. Keely, all anyone wants to talk about is the defense. You're out there. Tell us what you're seeing in terms of where you think the biggest improvements can happen on that side of the ball this season.
I'm really excited to see what this defense looks like. There's so many new faces, and the front seven just looks so beefier, if that's a description I can use. And it's one of those things where, at a certain point in camp, and I'm sure you guys can attest to this, you're going against the same people over and over again. And so at some point, I'm like, I want to see these guys against a real opponent. So I'm excited for Saturday because I think it's improved up front. I just want to see what that actually looks like when it's not Cardinal and Gold.
Shaun, how much do you think it's incumbent upon Alex Grinch to change a ton of things going into this year, or all of a sudden we're going to see bigger, faster, stronger athletes, and what they were trying to do is going to work better?
Well, I thought last year you saw the defense kind of run out of gas and with bodies, and they just kind of it fell off. The level of defense fell off, and the guys were getting hurt, and they just didn't have the same bullets in the gun to keep reloading, and it kind of went out with a whimper. But I think this year with the transfer portal and with the young guys, I think they think they've got now. I think you're going to see a defense where Alex Grinch says, all right, last year I might not have had the tools that I needed, but now I got the tools. I'm going to implement my scheme, how I wanted to run it, and now I got things. So now the onus really is on Coach Grinch because he's got his guys now, and let's see if this thing can work when he's got his pieces in place.
What have you heard from Coach Grinch that stood out?
That's an interesting question. I think just, the impact that Keon Bars could have. I think with the addition of Bear Alexander, he's someone who kind of flew under the radar, a transfer from Arizona, but he's someone who just is super reliable in practice. He's that guy, basically the nose tackle, who's really just taking up the middle, making it hard to run against this defense, which is something that USC needed last season. So what Grinch said was, we're trying to push Bars as hard as we can to reach the growth that he can get. And so I didn't know, he's a redshirt senior. How much can you grow in your fifth year? And it seems like Grinch has a high ceiling for him. So I'm curious what that looks like.
You can listen to Keely and Cody as well on the Victory podcast each week, and they'll preview each game. So be sure to subscribe to that. And I was listening to you guys sort of go through the roster breakdown. And, Cody, I talked to Lincoln Riley or asked him about this earlier, but the wide receiver group, every time it's almost like I take a poll of people that are going to practice and seeing a lot of things, and everyone says a different person. Oh, watch out for this person. Watch out for this person. Do you have any sense of who the number one on this team's going to be?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to look from last year, just from the production on the field. I mean, Brennan Rice, we saw him come on strong at the end of the year, played well against Tulane in the bowl game, really started getting consistent, and that's what the coaching staff was looking for him to do. Was the practices were great for him, but they just wanted to see it transition to the field, and he really came on strong at the end of the year. Taj Washington, in my opinion, was a guy, don't want to say forgotten, but he got a little bit under the radar with Mario Williams and Jordan Addison, was the number 2 receiver last year for the Trojans.
Yep.
Mario Williams, obviously someone that Caleb Williams is very comfortable with, a guy coming back. But then you start, rubbing your hands, get excited a little bit for the Deuce Robinsons, for the Zachariah Branches, for Mekhi Lemon, a guy. And I love what Lincoln said the other day. They said, is Mekhi kind of a forgotten guy with all these other 5-star guys?
Not here.
Yeah, and he said, I don't know where that's coming from, but it's not here. So, yeah, the possibilities are endless. It's just who's going to eat? How are you going to get everybody fed? How's everybody going to get on the field? And I can't wait to see what Coach Riley's going to do with these different personnel groupings and how he's going to create these mismatches by going 3 wide and then putting Deuce out there as well, creating opportunities on the offensive side of the ball where the defense doesn't know what, not only personnel, but what formation to line up in as well.
These things are all great, Jordan, but I think for me, you have all these skill pages, great, but you got to get the offensive line right. And I think when you listen to Lincoln Riley and what he's saying is they're still trying to figure out, kind of puzzle it together, who's going to be in there, and it's going to take some live action, I think, against some other teams to say, all right, we trust this guy enough to this is our 5 guys, and I think that's still rotating a little bit, and it's still maybe a concern of Lincoln. You could see, I think I could see it on his face a little bit, like, all right, who are going to be my 5 guys? And I think that Keely, the only really time they're going to find out is when they get in that battle and they figure it out. What have you seen,
of course,
in practice that maybe some guys that have stood up?
I mean, it's interesting the philosophy that they've used, and this is obviously I'm not in the meetings, but they tried to go with Jonah Monheim at right tackle in spring, and now they moved him to left tackle in fall. And it was one of those things where we've seen other offensive line coaches come in and you're musical chairs every practice. You're at a different depth. Yeah, exactly. But they really did a segment of spring. This is where you're at now. Fall. they've swapped them, and I'm curious if they're comfortable with that, because Cody and I have talked about it on the podcast. I was like, does this mean that in spring where they put Jonah and Michael Tarquin, did that not work, or are they just trying to figure it out? And that's something that I don't think we know yet, and I think they're still trying to figure out.
And I will say, too, it's a good problem to have, right? When you have multiple guys that can play and be starters on this team, but at some point you do want to have that continuity. You want to have that consistency. You want those guys to get comfortable with each other up front, especially Didic being the center, knowing who's to the right and left of me, knowing who's outside on the tackles. Yeah, you want to rotate the guys, but you also want to create that consistency as well.
It feels like to me, Jonah Monheim's the best offensive lineman, and they go, okay, let's just move him to left tackle, and that's a good place to start. Center is locked and left tackle is locked. And it's those transfers and the up-and-comers that are really playing this game of, like, who's better, the new guy or the guy that's been here but maybe isn't as physically large or, as hyped. I think those seem to be the battles.
And what's interesting is that they have so much experience, the transfers, and so you'd think it would be a sure lock, but then you hear that Mason Murphy is still battling Michael Tarquin, and you're like, okay, how's that going to battle? How's that going to play out? So
but these guys have a lot more time here.
That's the battle.
That's the battle,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
You immediately go, oh, so-and-so came from Florida where they played a lot of football. But, new systems, new coaches, just adjusting to life. It's not necessarily as much of a lock as we think it is.
And from Lincoln's perspective, it's like, maybe I have a couple weeks here to figure out, the schedule's a little.
He would never say that.
He wouldn't say that, but the schedule's a little bit where I can figure out my offensive line here maybe in the first couple weeks.
Fight on, Trojans, and fly on with ONT. Ontario International Airport is a proud sponsor of our USC Trojans. Visit SoCalSoEasy.com to book your journey through ONT today. And Trojans Live is sponsored by Pajanga Resort Casino, proud partner of USC football. Our over-under is next, and we're going to wrap up Trojans Live.
It's time to...
It's like a sneak peek into the Trojans locker room without the fear of, getting arrested. It's Trojans Live on your home for Trojans football, AM 790 KABC.
One final segment of Trojans Live here on a game week Monday. Good to be back. Your over-under is presented by Pachanga Resort Casino, proud partner of USA Athletics. Jordan Moore, Shaun Cody, Kessler, Keely, Eure. It's not a true over-under, but it's sort of a gambling, guessing type game this week. Who scores the first touchdown of the season?
Ooh.
I will say Brendan Rice.
Okay, I'm going to go Austin Jones.
I think we got this question on the podcast, and I think I said Caleb Williams. So there we go.
I almost said Caleb too,
Jordan?
but you guys always give me a hard time for going with Caleb as a quarterback.
Oh, the Heisman Trophy winner?
You should. You're gonna get
way to reach, bud.
I guess I'll go with Marshawn Lloyd then. I mean, it
Yeah.
feels
Okay.
like
That's
that's the other one. It's interesting to see. Will Austin be first out? Will Marshawn be first out? I'm interested to see.
Yeah, who's going to be out there on the field, man? That's what I mean. It's always fun, like doing the game every year with Pete next to me, and you the first play you get to see the offense and the defense, and these are the guys you're going to be with, and it's going to rotate throughout the season.
That's the thing. I don't think it matters that much. I mean, obviously, other than the quarterback spot, I don't think this time of year it matters that much.
Yeah, and that was kind of the question I asked Lincoln was do you use this week as to gauge how guys are going to prepare for a game week, or do you kind of go into season also rotating guys with Marshawn and Austin? I think it's just going to be feed the hot hand, right? Whoever comes on strong, whoever starts picking it up is going to be the guy that's going to get, primarily the carries. But other than that, yeah, it's going to be rotational for the first couple of games.
Last year they had 3 pick sixes in the opener,
Yeah.
right?
Insane.
So we could have said defense for the first touchdown, but that Lincoln's going to take the ball. So offense is if they win the
Fair.
coin toss, it's going to start with the offense.
It's game week. How weird is that?
Let's do it. Trojan
excited.
Tailgate Show, 3 o'clock on Saturday. Check these guys out on the Victory Podcast to get you going for this week. Thank you to our crew who's back. Another season of Trojans Live. Rick Cutler pressing all the buttons here. Herman Aguilera back at the studio. You can watch us all season long right here on YouTube. For the guys, I'm Jordan Moore. Fight on, everybody.